you want to know a person, you have to talk to the people who worked with him. We have 4 people here, Mr. Tariq Hussain, Mr. Mohsin Ali Khan Sahab, Deshpande Sahab, or Satyanand Bagai. I would like Tariq Hussain Sahab to come first. He's been involved not only with Raza Sahab at work, but also with Aligarh Association. He's been supporting the scholarship with his whole heart, and I would like to invite Tariq Hussain Sahab.
Abdullah, Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here, and as Dr. Raha said, celebrating his life. I'll read something which may be in the book too, but I think that's how I remember him and will remember him. My memories of Ahmad are many. All are of a great man who was a gentleman and a scholar. Somebody said he was an Eastern scholar. To me, he was a scholar, both Western and Eastern. There is a saying, true as far as I am concerned, that great minds discuss ideas, while small minds discuss people. Ahmad only discussed ideas, and those two which could produce benefits for the disadvantaged. During the last decade of his life, his focus was on educating the young of India and Pakistan. He gave the most precious commodity that we have, his time, to the cause. And this was done without ever seeking any recognition for himself. He did not seek office, but provided support to the various groups supporting the cause of education. He was a principal force behind the Aligarh Alumni Association, but he was equally supportive of the work of the Karachi Alumni Association. The idea of creating an endowment fund by the Karachi Alumni Association had its origin in the work done by Ahmad Bhai in the Aligarh Association. Without the intellectual support provided by him, the Karachi Alumni Association would not have been able to create its now successful endowment fund. The students in Pakistan who are benefiting owe him a debt that cannot be repaid. He continued to make these contributions of ideas and time despite his deteriorating health. He would come to these meetings and sit down to catch his breath and then begin to participate. I consider that as heroic, which very few in this world do or will do. He was a generous man who never spoke ill of others, or even, as I mentioned above, discussed people. The community has lost a great man, but the institutions that he helped create will continue to work for the cause that he so passionately supported. I will continue to miss him. Thank you.
I would invite Mr. Deshpande to come and say what he wants to.
Honorable head table, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset I must thank the Aligarh Muslim Association for organizing this memorial event for Dr. Ahmad Raza, giving us an opportunity to reflect upon the long-time friendship that we were privileged to have with Dr. Raza. You know, I met Dr. Raza for the first time some 3 decades ago, during early 70s, when he was seconded for a few years from our parent institution, Reserve Bank, to the place I was working, the Agricultural Refinance and Development Corporation. It was a development bank working on rural development in India. And later in 1980, this institution became India's National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. Looking back, Dr. Raza contributed a lot to this institution in its formative years, which then had the reputation of being the World Bank's largest partner in India's rural development programs, particularly in irrigation, which eventually led to the country's well-known green and white revolutions, making the country nearly self-sufficient in food grains, milk and milk products, besides reducing abject poverty and hunger. Dr. Raza, being an agricultural economist with several years of hands-on experience in the Reserve Bank of India, where he directed the institution's research and policy work in rural economics, was one of the conscious keepers of India's rural development programs that were jointly funded by the ARDC and the World Bank during 1970s. Dr. Raza then helped all of us in ARDC, the government, the World Bank, besides the civil society, which was conscious of development programs, in monitoring and evaluation ARDC and World Bank's rural development programs, primarily to assess if these were working, performing efficiently, and advising on what should be done to improve their service delivery, planning and allocation of resources, and achieving the desired outcomes and results. Dr. Raza's work always received much appreciation for its analytical and intellectual depth, its integrity, its relevance, and impact it was making on people. Later in early 1980, I left the Reserve Bank group and came over to Washington to join the World Bank, and Dr. Raza followed a few years later to join the International Monetary Fund. We then had the chance to meet and chat frequently at the fund or at the bank. These informal meetings were particularly delightful when our common friends from Reserve Bank Group visiting Washington also participated. Needless to say, Dr. Raza, known for his hospitality, hosted many of these informal luncheons and coffees, and with his keen insights in India's political economy and socio-economic issues, not infrequently turned his meetings into intellectual discussions marked, as usual, with his characteristic humor, clarity and understanding. Before leaving for India in November 2006, recently I went to see Dr. Raza at Shady Grove Hospital, where he was receiving treatment, and sadly enough, due to heavy dose of sedation, he was not conscious to say even hi. It was a very saddening evening. Unfortunately, he died a couple of months later, and I was in India then, and I called our former colleagues in the Reserve Bank Group to share this sad news. We all shared one common thought. If there was one thing that made Dr. Raza unique and different from many others, was his characteristic adab. You know what adab means. You may call this as adab of Islam, which exhorts everyone to be honest when one speaks, completely abandoning guile, deceit, scornfulness or sarcasm. Those who knew Dr. Raza will agree with me that he lived this adab every moment of his life. What is adab? Adab is courtesy, respect, appropriateness. Adab is not a formality. It helps to create the context in which we develop our humanness. This model of adab is typical of Islamic traditions with universal relevance, was indeed the intrinsic part of Dr. Raza's personality. Speaking on behalf of all of our colleagues back home in the Reserve Bank, NABARD, as well as here in World Bank and IMF, I do not think we will ever experience again the kind of pure friendship that Dr. Raza bestowed on all of us, during his lifetime. Dr. Raza, by his own disposition, made all of us implicitly aware of the benefits and possibilities of adab as the basis of healthy personal relationship, irrespective of one's religion, race, caste, creed, language, and nationality. In closing, while Dr. Raza's demise is a very deep personal loss to me, I will always feel his presence by being myself on the path of adab, just by being straightforward with one and all, with sincerity and truthfulness. Thank you very much.